Hello and welcome to We're One Body Audio Theater. Today, we will be once again talking about the story Heating Contractor by James G. Bruin Jr. My name's Thomas Marienchak, and I am the producer and audio technician here at the Audio Theater.
And I'm John Witechko. I'm a director and editor here at WAOB Audio Theater.
I'm Dennis Jerz. I've done some voice acting for these fine people, and I'm happy to be here to talk about The Heating Contractor.
All right. Thank you, everyone. For all those who are listening and have not listened to The Heating Contractor, I advise you to stop the audio right now and go listen to it because there will be spoilers.
Spoiler alert.
Okay. Awesome. So, The Heating Contractor. Dennis, you were once again Hans in the story. And whenever you read it, did you know it was Hansel and Gretel?
No, I did not notice it right away. There's a certain point where it becomes very clear. But I do think that the author did a really good job of inserting some distractions so that we thought this was going to be a story about two sweet old people who were in some kind of danger. And the sort of stereotypical don't trust other people. I think, those of us who are blessed with older people in our lives kind of know the story and know that, these are the people who, tell us to make sure you lock the door and look both ways before we cross the street. So I think the story just showed us some lovable older people who had fallen into a nice little routine, and it looked like we were going to see that routine disrupted from the outside. So I thought there was enough of these distractions that on my first read of the script, this was a surprise.
For me, I kind of knew it was going to, once it was Hans and then, Greta, and then I think he put Greta said brother, or the narrator. There was one point where it was brother.
Yeah, I think she calls him.
He calls him brother. So I was like, okay, this is Hansel and Gretel. So where's it going to go, right?
Yeah, I picked up on the allusion to the story, to the characters, but I didn't expect where it ended up going with that. I thought it was just seeing how they adapted to life afterward, after the witch, grabbed them. I didn't expect that adaptation to be them also following in the treatment of people in the same way the witch did. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Looking back through the script and noticing early on, Greta says he looks sweet.
Yes.
There's a nice little reference in there, and okay, so there's it reminded me of there's a scene in the musical Sweeney Todd, which also involves eating people. The creepy story. People baked into meat pies. The barber Sweeney Todd kills people, and his partner in a crime bakes them into pies and serves them to the public.
Oh, wow.
And there's a moment, there's an absolutely beautiful song called Joanna where Sweeney has fallen into this routine where he kills people, come to his barber shop, their body is sent down a chute into the kitchen, and they're served out. And it's this beautiful song that he's kind of found peace. And Mrs. Lovett, who runs the meat pie shop, not only does she have a supply of meat, but Sweeney is there with her. And they kind of set up this business together, and they have a friendship that's growing. She's in love with him. And there's this moment during the play, it's a long song, where it's almost like you're happy for these characters because they found each other.
Right.
And so there's this little moment where we don't know, we the audience don't know everything that's in this story, but the story is set up in a way that we see these old people who, they obviously have a habit of harvesting the local workforce this way for their own nefarious benefits.
Right.
But it's normal to them, and we just see they've fallen into a routine. And anytime you're telling a story, having a routine that's disrupted, either the disruption is going to be absorbed into the community or expelled from the community. And in this case, it got absorbed into the community, So it's really interesting seeing how the archetypes were working. And I'm kind of happy that I didn't get the story right away. I didn't get it right away
right.
because I can then go back and see, oh, okay, well, here's why. I was paying attention to this. And I was also thinking, well, how am I going to deliver Hans's lines? How much of an accent should he have? So I was thinking some of those technical terms, and you decided you didn't want him to have any accent whatsoever.
Yeah, right.
But I still had to develop an old person's voice. And so part of me was just analyzing his lines, and so maybe I missed some things that you guys picked up as you were looking at it more holistically. But once I got through the whole story, I could go back and I could look and I could say, oh, okay, I can see that. That was well done. That's I fell for that. I can see where they're doing it.
Right.
You talked about them going into like their routine. I like the element like at the end, one sees in the oven, and Hans comes back up to his sister, and she asks, "Did you get the key off of him? Did you make sure you get the keys?" Like, I just love, like, I'm imagining, like, this is, like, their, fifth, sixth, maybe 17th time doing this. But, like, there's, like, that, they keep learning as they go. Like, oh, we got to make sure we get them at this time. Or we got to make sure that we get it, on this day. Or make sure we get the keys. Or if they don't have a car, that's better. Like, what, like, they're trying to be very logistic. Like, trying to, like, make sure it all makes sense. And, like, you hear her say that. And, like, you think about yourself, like, when you're, like, learning stuff and then doing it, like, how do I make it better the next time? Like, just, like, learning and growing, but, like, for a very weird reason.
My favorite part was definitely the heating contractor coming in and inspecting the furnace. He didn't realize it was an oven. And then my favorite part was when that looks like an oven rack in there. And I just love that part. I just love that part.
And I love the contractor's voice, too. That was
Albert, yeah.
Yeah, Albert's we sometimes have to get him to get his Texas drawl out of his other characters, and he was able to let that one just just
happen.
Yeah, it was a lovely, really empathetic character. In a way that makes us feel bad, because the way the story is written, we don't really feel all that bad for the heating contractor, because we're on the side of Hans and Greta.
Oh, definitely.
And it's creepy and it's scary, but it's also fun. That's one of the pleasures, I think, of stories that are a little off the wall, that let you experience something that you wouldn't ordinarily want people to experience. Like, I felt a little embarrassed getting all excited describing the plot of Sweeney Todd. I thought, Tom doesn't know Sweeney Todd. He's not really the type of guy who would like Sweeney Todd.
Well,
so I'm going to have to explain it to him. But that's there's a pleasure in discovering something unusual that breaks the mold, and it's not so wacky and wild that you feel guilty afterwards. Right. But still, you can see what the story is doing. We are following our human instincts to empathize with the needy, and the story is designed for us to empathize with the older characters. And I'm a good person because I empathize with these people who culture tells us are worthy of respect and empathy and dignity and so forth. And that's when the surprise hits you, and you've been snookered. In a delightful way.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And once again, this is usually a time where you see in the news where scam artists, and it's usually the elderly and stuff like that. And even though that I knew it was Hansel and Gretel, I was like, I wonder where he's going with this. And I was getting upset. I was like, boo, the contractor coming in to,
preying on the older people.
Yeah, preying on their old people. And I'm thinking, because like he sets it up, we've been scammed before. Good thing we don't have any credit cards and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, you go, Gretel, you go, Hans, It
is kind of a dark interpretation of Hansel and Gretel, but when you realize in the original story they're abandoned by their parents and have to fend for themselves, you can kind of understand, okay, well, this is, you could imagine somebody with that kind of a childhood might grow up thinking of the world as something like this, because, they're
right. Yeah, and one thing, I'm glad you brought that up, going back to the original story of Hansel and Gretel, Grimm and other people have, brought this story, and they have like kind of different, ways of telling it. But the stepmothers always get a bad rap, I will have to say, because it was the stepmother who convinced her husband to leave the kids in the woods. And, and he's like, okay, okay, dear, I know we don't have any more food at the table. We have to leave them in the woods, But this boy, I'm thinking, there's Cinderella, many other stories where the stepmother just gets a bad rap, I guess back in the olden days, who can be the villain? Oh, let's go with the stepmother,
And I always wondered to some extent, I mean, since culturally it's not universal, but culturally often it is the mothers who spend most time with the kids and might be the ones who choose what stories to tell. Mm-hmm. So I'm just imagining the situation. What if the child says, I wish somebody else was my mother. You can imagine a mother of all the stories that she could tell. Right. Tell a story about a wicked stepmother and, well, if you want me to go away,
good point.
The person who comes and replaces me could be even worse. Here's what might happen to you.
Good point.
Now be quiet and go to bed like I told you to. That kind of thing.
That's right.
So these stories serve a cultural purpose. Mm-hmm. They're always told in a particular context, not just randomly. And so I am wondering if that's one reason why the stepmothers are so
always
difficult. Because I can imagine if you were a stepmother, you probably wouldn't tell these particular stories. There are plenty of other stories you could tell to calm your kids down. So this could be a factor for why the wicked stepmother seems to be so bad. It's not really against stepmothers.
Right.
It's for mothers. As a way to get kids to appreciate what they have.
Right.
Sort of like the in Coraline, the other mother seems like a modern version of the stepmother. Mm-hmm. They don't call it a stepmother; it's the other mother, but the button eyes and something like unrealistic about her, but like wanting something else. But then once you have it, realizing, oh, I didn't want that. I wanted what I already had.
Well, I am sorry we are out of time. Please comment on what you thought was the most interesting part of the story was. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you for listening to We Are One Body Audio Theater.